Next we have someone who's grown up in the East Side, the fruit of two powerhouses in part of the East Side. Mama Maria Kambon and Baba Kamal Kambon.
So I figured I'd start a little different. I actually started coming to Asian side when I was about this age. Many of you may remember, it's funny, I ran into people yesterday and I was greeting them and they were like, hey, I don't know who you are. And I said, oh, my mom's here. So they remember me looking like this. So I've grown up a little bit since then. But I also realized that I am about the age now that my mother was when she took this picture. Very honored to be back. This has been like a homecoming. But I'm here today to talk about the intersection between economics and economic empowerment and psychology. So I'm very honored that to be the spokesperson for a movement called Let's Buy Black 365, and we are, as of earlier this year, a strategic partner of the National Association of Black Psychologists. So, I don't want to talk too much about problems. We tend to focus so much on problems that we don't get to the solutions. So I do want to highlight a couple of things that just in society we realize that there are all of these different things that we touch and that we're a part of, from media and entertainment to food and politics and culture, commerce, sex, relationships, child rearing, education, and all of these things touch us. But for the most part, society at large keeps us as almost observers in our own experience, passive observers in our own experience. Yesterday there was a plenary session hosted by Kobe Kambon, no relation. But this quote was repeated multiple times there, and I'd like everybody just to say it with me to give us some grounding. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Exactly. So we know that that was a quote coined by Neely Fuller Jr., popularized by the late Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And once you realize and really internalize what that quote means, it'll give you some crystal clarity. I had the honor of meeting Dr. Welsing through a side conventions when I was younger, and then again as a young adult when I moved from North Carolina to the DC metro area and had the opportunity to attend some of her Howard University sessions. And I want to point out, I won't read the whole quote, but she talks about counter-racist psychiatry and how we define mental illness. And I'll just highlight this bottom portion, which says, submission to and cooperation with victimization are signs of individual or group mental illness or self-negation. So for the clinicians in the room, I'm not a psychologist. Has anybody seen that? You don't even have to be a clinician. Have you seen that? Okay. And I submit that if we look at what is going on in our society, from the genocide against our people through what's called police brutality, from self-destructive behavior and all these things, we recognize that we are in fact suffering from a deep group and self mental illness. I also would hold that at the heart of that is economics. Economics is the common denominator. Whether we're talking about the poisoning of our water systems that we don't control, that's economics. Whether we're talking about other people's police in our community, that's economics. Whether we're talking about any of the things, education, unemployment, underemployment, these are all economic issues. And so group economics, a term that was popularized by Claude Anderson, cooperative economics, Kujima, all of these concepts talk about what the solution is for our people. Also, and I didn't bring the books up, I figured I'm short, and if I stacked them up, it'd be too tall. But the book Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson is an incredible resource to talk about what the solution is for Black people. And when we look at the cycle or the photos we just looked at, you see the trend. From an economics perspective, you see that we spend money to finance, or you spend money to finance your oppression. They profit. Yeah. They reinvest those profits into more oppression and genocide. You struggle mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually. And in order to survive, you react in ways that do not make sense. Right. And then you find unnatural ways to cope with that. Either through sexual misconduct, either through spending behavior, through so-called black-on-black crimes, or maybe even through withdrawal and just the apathy of not dealing with what is really going on. And they profit off of that again, because most of those things that we do, can't forget diet, we will eat ourselves to death, to use a term that Dr. Laila Africa talks about. There's another term I'd like to point out. My father is there in the back of the room, Dr. Kambon, has a term called subtle suicide. So there's chronic suicide and there's acute suicide. Acute suicide is I just jumped out a window, but chronic suicide is I'm just going to go to McDonald's every day. I'm just going to smoke. So they profit off of our death, and they profit off of us while we're alive. And at the root and the heart of all of this is economics. I won't go, for the sake of time, I won't go too much into this, but Dr. Amos Wilson has a really powerful concept that I like, where he talks about somnambulistic possession. And this isn't a sci-fi concept. It is really the concept of walking around but not being awake. Does anybody know someone who fits that? I won't ask you to say you are the one that fits that. But again, if we're living in a society that has all of this going on, then, how can you not be impacted mentally? One of my favorite quotes is, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. Right. Amen. So, this isn't sci-fi. We are literally a walking dead until we wake up. And we allow ourselves to medicate with all of these things that we think are reflective of our own choices. But what we tend to do is, again, finance our own oppression. So our eye is way off the ball. And it's going to hit us in the face, or it is hitting us in the face, through this mass manipulation, while other people are creating legacy and wealth. Again, it's hitting us in the face. So just real quick, I want you to study this photo, and I submit that the group on the left is our people, and the individual on the right is the system of racism and white supremacy.
Yes, thank you for that.
What do you see in this picture? Somebody yell it out. Let's do some call and response and get some people awoke.
I will not submit.
I'm going to stand up. And what happens if more of us stand up? Aren't we more in numbers?
Yes, we are.
Are we more in resources and talent?
We are. There you go.
And we defeat the system of racism and white supremacy. This is where we need to focus in terms of mental health, in terms of psychology, in terms of group economics. To go back to Dr. Welsing, she talks about a tiered approach. First, we need to, this is from her chapter on symbols in the ISIS paper. She talks about decoding the system of racism and white supremacy so that we can reorganize ourselves. Once we reorganize ourselves, we can have effective behavior shifts. in terms of how we interact with each other, in terms of how we interact with outsiders, in terms of how we interact with our money, in terms of how we interact intergenerationally. And this group and self-respect and support can again eliminate the system of racism and white supremacy. And once we do that, we can create the system of justice and ma'at that we need to be focused on. I don't know if we'll talk too much about the problem, but I just want to highlight the fact that, again, if we look at all of this in terms of economics, we only have two choices. Every time we open our wallet, every time we pull out some cash, every time we pull out a credit card. We are either financing the system of racism and white supremacy, or we're financing black liberation. Those are the only two choices. So the next time you pull out your credit card, let's think about which one we're going to make stronger. So I'm going to fast forward and just highlight solutions because I don't want to go over time. I'm going to use Bob Kevin's thing just an hour more. No, I'm kidding. Again, the National Association of Black Psychologists and Let's Buy Black 365 are now strategic partners. And this all is about consumer psychology. And this is another image that I really want us to focus on for a second. So let's take a look at what we see in this picture. Somebody yell it out. Okay. So we're bending over, and they are literally playing a game on our backs. And they're building wealth on our backs. And from the looks of their mustaches and everything, it looks like they've been playing it for a while.
Wealth at our expense.
Let's read it together.
All we have to do is stand up and their game is over.
All right. I'm going to skip that and have some quotes, but one of my favorite quotes from Malcolm X is where he says, you know, we need to control the resources in our communities. And again, controlling the resources in our communities eliminates all the other problems. We don't have to have huge think tanks on how to resolve all these problems if we practice group and cooperative economics. Another quote that I love, let's read it together from Marcus Garvey. Be black, buy black, think black, and everything else will take care of itself. Not trying to put the psychologist out of a job, but you know, here's a formula right here. All right, so the Let's Buy Black 365 movement is having a launch activity later this year. And I'm so honored that the Institute of a Black World, we are partnered there, and the economics platform for the State of the Black World Convention includes the Let's Buy Black 365 model. So we've got the Association of Black Psychologists, we've got IBW, and with that together, we've got this Black Revolution that's coming. And what the movement entails in general is this system where we divert our attention from these systems of white supremacy, these social networks that suppress our messages and ignore our experience. And we have created a black social network where we can talk about things that are relevant to black people. We have a resource where you can identify not just any black business, but committed black-owned businesses. We have partnered with black-owned businesses like Alpha Office Supplies, which is an office supply company that has anything that you can imagine from anywhere. But unlike a place like Walmart or Target that puts its profits into the prison industrial complex, Alpha Office Supplies is putting its money back into building stronger black businesses and employing black people. So we're about how do we redirect the resources and the funds. And I dropped in the Association of Black Psychologists there as a strategic partner. And so, just highlighting a little bit, there's some shots from the social network. That's my profile picture. And so this is an economic container where you can do anything that you would on any other social network, with the little added benefit of of it having a points system, so people are competing against each other for points. And the way that you earn points is by networking with other Black people, telling other Black people about resources in their community. It is by connecting and shopping Black and going to Black events, so that we are now engaging in a social network that is unlike others, which are really antisocial because it keeps us from really connecting, and becomes one where it is in fact social online and offline, so that we can reconnect and regain control of our communities. So I will fast forward through some of these. Just do want to point out that the little girl on the left is my 3-year-old, well, she's now 8-year-old niece, who when she was 3 started her own website, vegan cooking show for kids, and blog. And it's also the reason that we're here, because when we talk about intergenerational connectivity, where and how we shop and this whole concept of economics isn't just about today. So, we as a people, and especially our psychologists, need to specialize not just in psychology, but also in optometry to an extent, because we tend to be so myopic in our focus that we only see the next day or week, and we need to be seeing into the future and into what is happening 1 and 2 generations from now, because we need to be laying the foundation and the framework so that when she gets to be of age, there is a platform that is receptive, a world that is receptive to her empowerment. So, I probably wrote over time, I don't know. So, these are just some shots of the app that's coming out, and where you can identify Black-owned businesses, shop Black-owned businesses, you can rate and review businesses so that we can improve our self-esteem. Right now, our self-esteem and self-awareness of our own companies is so defeated. I had one problem with one Black-owned business, so I'm never going back. Every time I hear that, we think about the mental illness that affects our people. But what if we're rating and reviewing businesses and even getting points for rating and reviewing businesses so that we can collectively rebuild our self-esteem and say, I am someone who shops Black, and I can tell you about a quality Black-owned business too. The last part that I'll highlight here is this is not only just about shopping Black, but it's also about controlling resources. And we partnered, one important partnership is with psychology, the other is with Black media. Because when we understand media and again consumer psychology, we recognize that the role of media is to stimulate commerce. And what we are watching now on a mass scale is dumbing us down. It's reinforcing self-hatred and doing all these things. So we partner with Black media, so within the app, you can listen to Black radio, Black conscious radio, Black-owned radio. You can watch Black TV. So this is not BET, which claims to be the source of Black culture, but is not Black-owned and perpetuates the same ignorance that you all are employed to combat. This is about watching Black television. And the last part, you'll see to get involved this is a way that we can each, regardless of age or capacity, turn our talents and skills and resources and energy back into our communities. So it doesn't matter whether your full-time job is not with someone who looks like you. You can use your free time to reinvest in community so that you can be a part of the solution. So, in closing, this whole get involved concept, I'll say that someone mentioned yesterday about the disconnect between the generations. And one of the major reasons for that disconnect, I hold, is that young people are angry. And they're angry, or we're angry, because there are so many of our elders and predecessors who, I was very fortunate to grow up in the house that I grew up in with elders that I've had, but many are angry because if we're all just out spending money and doing all these things, we recognize that our predecessors may have failed us. And the way to mend that intergenerational disconnect is for elders and others to say, I am committing to my people. So the last 2 slides I will share with you before I yield the floor. I'd just like to do another call and response. I'd like everybody to read this with me. To whom you give your money, you give your power. Choose your power. Join the movement. All right. And this last slide. The time of, read it with me, the time of when we're going to get together is dead. Starting today, I am the solution. I am the resource my people need. I am the Let's Fight Black 365 movement. If we have this attitude every day, and if our psychologists are the warriors who are carrying this message to our community, there's no way that we can't win.